the WiseTech story.
Yeah, thank you. I'm really excited to be here. I've also been really fortunate to be part of that WiseTech story. I've been with the organisation for 8 years, but of course, WiseTech's been around a lot longer than that. And it started with our founder, CEO, and current founder and CEO, Richard White, who just is an inspiration. He was the reason that I joined the organisation. He's the reason that I'm still there today. You know, he saw an opportunity to solve a problem and to do it in a way that nobody else was doing. And he chose to solve that problem through technology. And he continues to think in ways that are inspirational and inspiring to do things that break the mold. And, you know, the people at WiseTech, including myself, we're all united in knowing what we've got to do, and we keep, you know, working together to achieve that. And so, you know, 8 years ago when I happened across Richard, because I was actually trying to sell him something, I was working for myself, and fortunately, you know, met a guy who just inspired me, and I couldn't help but just want to work for this company. And it wasn't because it was a technology business, it wasn't because it was working in supply chain, it was about the people and the vision. And you know, even today, I joined a company, 300 people around the world. We've got 2,200 today. We've got offices all over. I still feel the same excitement then as I do today. It's a great story, a great success, Australian success story.
Now, tell us what led you down the path in terms of talent, because it's a specific skill set. I kind of joked a little bit earlier that when you're trying to employ people early on, you know, we do tend to employ each other, someone who maybe looks like us, sounds like us, thinks like us, drinks like us. You know, there's that very specific sort of bias that sometimes happens. Of course, part of your job is to think about diversity, think about that breadth of talent that you need around the table or to get stuff done. Tell us what led you to be interested in this particular part of the business, because it really is the part that greases the wheels.
I am so curious. I love people. I love finding out about people. I like to know what motivates and inspires people, not what they want to do. No one wants to come to work to do a job. I don't believe in job descriptions. Job descriptions are just a script and they're a tick box. So I don't hire people to do a job. I hire people because I want them to succeed. I want them to achieve something. So I've got to create this win-win outcome for them. I've got to create something for them. And so many years ago when I first got into talent acquisition, it wasn't called that back then. I'll slightly be giving away my age when I sort of say it was a very different world. I was, you know, working for a company, internal HR sort of role, didn't know what I was doing. And it was all about, you know, posting an ad in a newspaper, sitting back and waiting for people to fax or post in their applications. So it's a very different world, but it's still the same. Like what I did then is still the same now. I sort of just fell into recruiting because we had the same challenges. You know, I worked in a very male-dominated industry. I worked in insurance at the time, and it was all golf clubs and, you know, beers on a Friday. That wasn't who I am. I was a young female who was working in a very male industry. And someone said to me, well, why don't you help us change that? Why don't you help us think a little bit differently about how we get people like you to work for companies like us? And so that challenge just really inspired me. So without any HR qualifications or formal understanding about talent acquisition, I started to think about that problem, and I started to think creatively about how do I, you know, engage with that talent pool. They're out there, they're just not coming to us. So how do I do that? And I've been solving that problem today. I'm still doing the same problem. It's the same thing over and over again. We just have different challenges. You know, nowadays I can post an ad and I can get an application within 5 minutes. 20 years ago, I had to wait, you know, a couple of days before that came in. But it didn't mean that I sat there and waited for that to happen. I had to think creatively and go out there. So I love what I do. I really love it. I love getting to know people, and yeah, that's talent acquisition for me in a nutshell.
So, in that context, when do you start to think about getting someone on board who, in that specialist role, who deals with talent, deals with employment, deals with getting people on board? And I know there's a few people across WiseTech who specialise in subsections of what we can broadly, I suppose, call HR. But there is that sense that somewhere along the way, someone other than the founder or maybe the CEO needs to delegate this to someone who's going to think about how they build out the team.
Absolutely. And it's going to be different for every single person. It's going to be different for every single company. So I don't actually have the answer for you. If you're a startup, it starts with you. You're the person who's got to really understand what can you offer people? You know, what are you passionate about? What are you going to achieve? Starting with you then have something to give someone else. And you also have the network. You know, the first thing I would be doing if and I do time and time again, is I look who's around me. Who are the people that are next to me? Who's in this room right now? Who is, you know, commenting online? I'm constantly looking, talking to my network to find those people. And eventually you do get to a size where you have someone like me who thinks about it. But I've worked for myself. I've done things all just me on my own, and I still operate in the same way then as I do today. You know, if you're starting up, you've got you've got your entire network here, you've got external recruiters that you get your advice from. There's lots of ways that you can start to formulate your plan of how you find good people. But really, it starts with you. It starts with you as an individual. You're your best recruiter.
Okay, I want to do a temp check. Helicopter Ange, looking out over the talent system at the moment, employing, hiring people. What are you seeing at this point in time? Is it a really challenging market for tech companies?
Sure. You know, there's lots of challenges because we're in a there's lots of opportunities. You know, the reason why it's hard to hire great people is because Australia is all of a sudden an amazing place for technology businesses. So there's a good problem to have. There's a long-term strategy that we need to focus on, and companies like WiseTech and myself are actively involved in that. You know, we're going out to high schools, we're going out to primary schools, we're going out to you know, universities, and we're supporting the next generation. I'm not going to hire them. They're not going to solve the problem of talent acquisition right now, but we invest in the long term. And then you've got to look at what you've got. You've got to look at your own people. You know, I'm proud of the fact that the highest turnover in our business at one point was our reception. You know, it was amazing. And the reason for that was because I didn't hire people to answer phones. I hired people that I knew could make a massive impact in our organisation. So all of a sudden, they're making a great impression in the business. We get to see how fabulous they are. And guess what? They start moving. They start coming to work with me. They start moving into, you know, the people operations team. They start moving into product. So we've got a responsibility to develop the right people, and we can all do that. And so there is talent. You've just got to find the right people with the right motivators that match what you're looking for, and then you've got to develop it. And we do it pretty well at WiseTech.
So to flip it around for a second and think of it from an employee's point of view, is it a case that you should take the wrong job in the right company and then things can go from there? So, you know, it's not if you're prepared to start at the bottom, you know, whether it's reception. I always think of that story of Roger Corbett sort of, you know, starting off pretty much in a similar space, ended up being chair of the CEO of the business. Those moments happen. And of course, if you're a startup, you basically are the chief dishwasher, packer and unpacker along the way anyway. Should you just sort of look for the company you want to work for and then figure out what you're going to do after that?
Sometimes. I think everything's different for individuals. So everyone has got their own motivators, their own unique ideas of what they want to achieve, and every company is different. So even if I think about my journey at WiseTech, and I, you know, think, would I employ me as head of talent? And probably 8 years ago when I joined WiseTech Global, the answer would be no. Because on paper, I mean, I had recruitment experience, but like maybe I wouldn't have employed myself. But I was right, and the company was right, and the business was right for me. And it's been an incredible journey. I think, you know, as individuals, if people are looking for opportunities, and my advice to people in the job market is to not get caught up in the hype, to explore opportunities, to meet people, to work out what it is that you really want, and not to chase things that, you know, are just the next thing. Bigger salaries, that will come if you're successful. Chasing benefits that, you know, again, will come if you're in the right business. Reality is you join an organisation as an employee because you want to make a positive impact for yourself. You want to grow your career, you want to progress, you want to make a difference. If you can find the right environment that's right for you, all of those things will happen. And I think, you know, we've got to encourage people to just put themselves out there a little bit, test themselves, and not be afraid to start sometimes a lower level role if that's what it takes. If you've made a decision that you want to work for that particular company, do it and prove yourself and drive your career that way. Don't wait for it to happen. You've got to make it for yourself.
Now, for people who have been Googling newspaper and facts to understand what they are, I'm interested in the generational shift and whether you've seen one, you experience it, and whether there's a different way of thinking for younger employees at this point in time. And I won't say our generation, but just say a few of us have done a few laps around the oval. Has it shifted from where we were in our expectations when we first started work to the millennial generation that it's now coming into the workplace?
Massively. And I actually feel empathy with a lot of people who are entering the workplace at the moment. There's a lot of things that they're not yet really able to understand. I was fortunate that I came into a workforce where there was pretty strict rules. You know, you were there at 9 o'clock and you were there on time. You were not a minute late. So I'm never late for anything. I am so punctual, and, you know, I make a commitment because that was instilled to me such a long time ago that that's how I had to work. Now we're all working from home. I've got people joining my team. It might be the first time that they've ever interviewed someone. They're not benefiting from sitting next to me, hearing me talk, hearing my passion, hearing how I'm communicating with people. So they don't learn in the same way. I can have an hour conversation with them. I meet with my team twice a week. I'm available to them all the time, but it's not the same as sitting next to me, hearing me, coming into my meetings, sharing that journey with me. So I think that the younger generation have actually got things quite hard. I think they've got some real challenges. What I am impressed though, because part of my role exposes me a lot to, you know, younger children who are learning tech and are interested about tech, is that they're super smart, like really super smart. They know things that I couldn't even possibly begin to even comprehend. So I think we're all in a very exciting position, is that people, the education system is producing amazing people, but there are challenges for people coming out of that. And I think that that's our responsibility as experienced, you know, managers, leaders, business owners, entrepreneurs, to help that next generation go along on that journey with us.
Now, I do want to ask you around the culture stuff because there we are. Because maybe it's me. Maybe I'm just giving off electronic vibes today that are sort of like becoming black spots. One of the interesting things, one of the great parts about WiseTech's growth story is Richard has pursued a very aggressive acquisition strategy. He's bought a lot of companies along the way, and a lot of startups, when they get to that scale-up phase, do it. I look at Tim Fung at Airtasker today. You know, they've just bought OneFlare as a company that aligns with what they're doing. Plenty of tech companies, they get to a certain point where, yes, there's still great growth in general, but, you know, buying another company is another way to inject it in. There's a culture thing at that point, because you've got the culture of the business you're acquiring having to fit into the business that you are. And I have this picture of it's a little bit like the International Space Station, where you are putting a whole bunch of different pieces together, and it's not always perfect, but you know what? Gets the job done, which is fantastic. How do you think about that, and how do you tackle that particular issue of taking a large swathe of people into your culture at WiseTech?
The way that we've done it, a lot of our acquisitions have been founder-led businesses. And those businesses are united in our mission to be the operating system for supply chain. So our missions are aligned. Our goal, to achieve that goal, you can't just do that as one person. You need to be a group of people coming together and driving that forward. So you start with making sure that you're aligned. You all know what you're looking to achieve. We're all committed to that. And then the rest just starts to follow. And sure, you know, you have to think about the people. The people are who we are. And so I love my role. It's taken a whole new dimension. I talk to people all over the world now who are now part of the WiseTech Global Group, and I'm helping them reshape what their business looks like in terms of how do they hire, how do they integrate into the organisation, and I just love that. It's a learning journey for me as much as it is for them, and we're going on it together because we all know what we need to achieve, and we are focused on doing that. So it's been personally for me an amazing opportunity to be part of that, and you know, connecting those people and driving that forward globally has changed my role. It's changed the business, and I think we're doing well.
On that front, you mentioned, being a great global business. Of course, all tech companies want to be great global businesses. How do you tackle that cultural thing as you deal with different cultures around the world? We're very used to the way we think in Australia. It all makes perfect sense and it's all very clear. But of course, not everyone thinks exactly the same way. How do you address that in a broad global vision?
Well, you can't. You have to look at it with what's going on in front of you. And if I think about it from my perspective, I work with a global team. So I have a team in India, I have a team in China, we're building a team in Europe. The localization of talent acquisition changes, employment legislation changes, cultures are different, everything is different. But at the end of the day, we're still people. And so we still want the same things. We go to work because we want to make an impact. We go to work because we want to make a difference. We want to improve. Once you understand that, your job becomes a little bit easier. And then it becomes exciting because you get to be part of celebrations that are happening overseas. You get to learn about different things. So we all become better for it. I personally love working in a global team. I think it's amazing.
Speaking of that global thing again, it's kind of its own remote work. So if you're a global business, you've already kind of got a version of remote work going on because you're part of one big ecosystem, but in different places. How have you tackled that over the last couple of years? And are there any tips or tricks that we should think about? Because you mentioned a little bit earlier about the difference between being beside you, and the infectious nature of, the way you tackle all the tasks. It's a bit different trying to get that across in a Zoom meeting.
It is, but you've just got to do it. There's no answer for it because everyone's going to be different and every team is going to be different. The needs of the team are going to be different. And so you've just got to do it. You've just got to listen. You've got to respond. You can't sit there and prescribe something. If you sit there and think, this is what I want to do, well, it's going to change. So you have to just get on with it. And I've had to learn. I didn't manage a global team before recently. The last few years have been really where I started to manage people globally, and I'm responding to it and I'm learning all the time with the people that I work with and respect what they're doing and very transparent. We've tried lots of things. We have meetings twice a week in our team, global meetings. It means some people need to get up ridiculously early, some people are working really late, but we have to make allowances for that because that's the nature of what we're doing at the moment. And, we're still learning and we will continue to learn.
You kind of mentioned a little bit earlier when you talked about the founders who come on board in the M&A share the same vision around the mission. How do you tackle that particular issue when you go from a startup with maybe 50 people and everyone's name and, you're able to wave and maybe even know their family story and the kids' names to a couple of hundred, and then it's like, you think they work here, but you're not quite sure. And then suddenly it gets to thousands. Atlassian this week, or last week's report, I think, hit 8,000 people on its team globally. They're astonishing numbers of employees. How do you get everyone on the same page and set that culture in such a big team?
Richard, from the start. So one of the things that inspired me when I joined WiseTech is Richard had, and if you haven't heard of our business, I would recommend you go to our website and have a look at what we call our credo. Our credo is the way that we live and breathe. It's how we operate as an organisation. And it's not just a mission statement that, someone came up with and said, hey, this is how you're going to operate. It genuinely is his voice. When I read that mission statement, I hear Richard, I hear his voice. And he has built a business that genuinely comes from that credo. And from that credo, lots of mantras about the way that we work and the way that we operate have come from that. And any meeting that you could be in within WiseTech, you'll hear them time and time again, used over and over and over again to inform the way that we work. And we start to live and breathe and drive that. It takes time. You can't just go to someone, here's a piece of paper, this is how you've now got to act. You've actually got to show people, you've got to take them on that journey of understanding what that really means, but not just what it means for an organisation, what does it mean to you as an individual? Because even when I look at our credo and mantra, those those sentences, those words mean different things to me than they would mean to a software engineer in our business and a product manager, but they're still the way that we operate. It's our sort of DNA. And so having that and thinking about it as you know, a startup or an entrepreneur, what does that mean? And then how do you inform that through your business and through the people that you work with? And so we've gone on a journey of doing that, and we're still on that journey. It's not a, here you go, here's the prescription, here's what you need to do. It's about taking people with you.
Well, as part of that journey, how do you do the temperature check? How do you make sure that everyone's happy, that, because we are talking about retention along the way, and I think that's a big issue, because I don't know about you, but I've worked in some companies where, you know, there is like that, you're in the Death Star and there's a rebel alliance along the way that sprouts up somewhere over there, and you're trying to figure out how to tackle that. What are your solutions and what are your strategies for making sure that everyone is happy and powering and getting what they want out of their work?
You can't make everyone happy. That's the one thing that you just can't do. But what you can do is you have to rely on your people. Richard trusts me to check in on my team. I do a good job every single day making sure that my team are happy, knowing where they're at, listening for those signs that maybe are telling me that maybe someone's not having a good day today or they need me. You know, but then on the bigger scale of things, we have people operations team, we have the organisation who are thinking at a much more higher strategic level about how do we implement, you know, other things that continue to drive culture. Culture's just organic and then it's filtered down. And so a lot of the times you've got to really think about things at a bit of a macro level. You've got to trust your team. You've got to trust people that you work with to hear those warning signs, hear those things that you just go, maybe this is not right. And then you've got to be able to step in and own it. And you've got to have those honest conversations. You've got to talk to people. But also, you've got to accept that people move on as well. That's okay. People move on. They come back. You know, it's not the end of the world. We're all wanting to grow. We're all wanting to develop. But thankfully, you know, if you can keep people and you can retain them for the right reasons, and it's not just about money. I know there's a lot of talk about salaries increasing and all this sort of stuff. That's not a retention mechanism. Retention is really about people being united in what you are wanting to achieve. It's about people really being excited and enthusiastic about, you know, the direction that they're going, and in turn getting something out of it. I wouldn't be at WiseTech today if I didn't think that I was a better person today than I was yesterday. Every day I am growing. Every day I'm becoming a better version of me. That's what keeps me at WiseTech. And that's what we've got to make sure that we're doing for every single person in our business.
Speaking of that moving on thing, oh, thank you. That one works really well. Well done, Robbie. When people do leave, how important is it to you that you leave the door open? Because I think an interesting part is, I mean, Richard Burton and Liz Taylor got together and broke up, I can't remember how many times, but great companies, I think, rehire great people and they come back with a new set of skills that they then feed into that. Is that a really key part of your thinking along the way as well?
Absolutely. You know, you've got to let people go and you've got to let them grow, and that's okay, that's fine. But I don't forget good people, and I hope that they don't forget me or the company. And we keep in touch, and we continue to connect, and I continue to follow people's careers, and I just keep that door wide open. There's lots of people that have done that within WiseTech, and we should celebrate that. We don't want people leaving in droves, of course. You know, we want to be able to retain and keep people motivated, but it's not a problem. And having people go out and go, you know what? Actually, maybe that just wasn't the right move for me. I thought I wanted to do that, or I thought it might be nice to get that benefit, or I thought it might be nice to work in this particular location or whatever it might be. And all of a sudden they go, actually, I've learned something about myself. I've learned that this is more important to me. And that was what I had at WiseTech Global. And so it can be really beneficial because you get those people back and then they don't leave.
We're going to throw it open to the floor for questions, and if you are watching online, you can also send us a message and we shall ask some of those as well. But I do want to ask you about, we talked about salaries, and of course the whole startup cliche was beanbags and ping pong tables 20 years ago. Now it's employee share schemes, remote working. Are you seeing any specific trends around expectations and what people would like to see and have a company do for them?
there's a lot of noise around it. So I think LinkedIn's just full of articles around, high salaries and, don't even come to work and we'll pay you. And, there's lots of crazy things that are going on. But the reality is that's been going on for years. We all have value. For me, I know that I deliver a return on investment. So I get paid a salary, and that salary I'm comfortable with, but I'm comfortable with because I'm delivering a return at that level. And that's the reality for most people. So yes, salaries are increasing, but it shouldn't be fueled, or you shouldn't be motivated by going, well, this person will pay that. There's always someone who's going to pay you more money. Always. There's always someone who's got deeper pockets and better benefits. I think the reality is for job seekers, and the reality for companies is actually, what are we trying to achieve here? What is the impact that you're going to make? When you focus on that and the real reason that you go to work and you get up in the morning, all of that around money and benefits will come. It will all come.
All right, we've got a great question here from Jimmy, who mentions, having had the opportunity to work closely with all of those founders you mentioned, is there a common trait that you see present among successful founders in general?
Well, I've only really worked for Richard, who's a founder, and I obviously work with our acquired businesses, but I think it was really about what I saw in Richard was his vision. So when I joined WiseTech, I wasn't looking for a job. I walked into a building in Alexandria, which is where our office is, and I wasn't really prepared for that meeting. In my head, I was like, it's just technology business, supply chain organisation. And I walked into an organisation that there was just this energy and presence, and I sat in the reception and I was like, wow, that's pretty cool. And then this guy came over and I was like, wow, who's he? He was just amazing. And he was doing these things called CEO tours at the time, and he was taking people around the office and he was talking about the company and the vision. And I'm looking around and I'm thinking, what he's talking about and what I see is two different things. But wow, this is, it blew my mind. And then all of a sudden, I was like, this is super exciting. This is a company that is so different, thinks differently, acts differently. And now I'm fortunate because I've got to know Richard. I realised that actually he lives in the future. Like he's 5 years ahead of all of us, 10 years ahead of all of us. He's
his own metaverse.
Yeah, he is. Like he's way ahead of everyone else. And that can be, scary and confusing, but it's super exciting. So I think, it is about that vision. It is about knowing this is what we're going to achieve and then driving towards it. And, I've been fortunate to work with Richard, who's very much like that.
All right, I'm going to ask one more from our online viewers, and then we'll come to the floor if we can grab a mic, please, Robbie. Ali from Tassie, hi to everyone down in Tasmania. What tactics have proved most successful in finding the best talent? And I'm going to allow the supplementary question from her as well. What do you look for in the interview stage to make sure that people are a solid cultural fit?
What I don't look for is people to just do a job. That's not what I look for. That's why I don't sit there with job descriptions with a wish list of what people look for. I actually want to understand what I've been talking about. Why would this person join this organisation? So that's what I start with. So every time I'm hiring for the organisation or for an individual, I'm starting with, who is that individual? Who's that hiring manager? Who are the team? What is an individual going to gain from joining that organisation? So that's where I start. Then I'm transporting myself into, where is this person? What are they doing? I'm not thinking about, well, do they have a degree? Have they wrote code in C#? Or I'm thinking about, what is it what stage in their life are they at? Where can I find them? If they're not on the job boards or they're being hounded on LinkedIn, how do I engage with that individual? So you have to put yourself in that mindset, and then you start working towards finding them. So then you start thinking differently. You start talking to people, engaging with people. And all of a sudden, you find people that are motivated in a different way. They might not have been looking for work. I love it when people are not looking for work and I tap them on the shoulder and all of a sudden they're super excited about working for us. But you're finding people and you're making a difference. You're changing their world, you're changing the business. And so thinking about talent differently for me is exciting, and I could talk about it forever.
Well, we'll go for as long as we can, but we do have a question over here.
Hi, Angie. I'm curious about the previous topic of where you alluded to people being a little bit spoilt in the market at the moment, like wanting a lot of benefits. What have you found to be the average time someone stays with a company before moving, in the tech industry at least?
I wouldn't say people are spoiled. I think that people have got amazing opportunities, and I think businesses and people who are trying to start up have got an amazing opportunity to think differently about hiring. It's very different from when I started. When my first role, it was very much I really had to work to get that first position. At the moment, there's lots of opportunity for people, but I still think that individuals have got a really tough task when there's so much to choose from. Where do you go when you're informed by you need to be earning more money, you need to be getting this benefit? That's actually a really confusing place to be. So I think, again, just bring it back to normal human transaction. When you're thinking about who are you trying to hire, what can you offer someone? If you can't compete with the big companies because they're listed or they are offering, opportunities for people to work overseas or whatever it might be, don't compete. You're not going to compete for that. Think a little bit differently. Think about, how do you engage? Where do you find those people? And then take the right people on the journey. It takes a little bit of time to get to that person and to get to that mindset. But if you can find the right person, you can bring them along, and then all of a sudden, those benefits, the salary, it's not the reason that people join companies.
Thanks. But would you say there's like an industry standard, like duration?
For people...
For how long someone stays at a company before moving?
People are going to stay in a company until they tap out. When I joined WiseTech Global, I had no intention of joining them, zero. I thought maybe I might stay there, maybe a year. The reason that I stay is because I'm being challenged, because it's not because of benefits. It's not because I get paid well. It's because every day I get to work with people who make me better. I get to have conversations with people who make me go, wow, that's really cool. Like, how do I do that? That's what motivates me. But what motivates me is not going to motivate you. It might not motivate someone who's first out of high school or university. Everybody is different. And so my advice, if I was giving career counselling to someone and guide them on the career, would just completely depend on the individual and completely depend on what they're looking to achieve. So one size shoe definitely doesn't fit all.
We've got time for one more question. Anyone? All right, I'm going to finally then finish with, you talked about this, the enthusiasm that you bring to us is extraordinary. What's the thing that when you wake up in the morning you think about when it comes to work, and do you start checking your emails, or what habits do you have to prepare yourself for your workday?
Yeah, again, they've changed. And so this week was the first week, this week actually, it was last week. Last week I went into the office. I've not been into the office in ages, and I loved it because I had this habit. I used to listen to podcasts every day. So the first thing I'd do is I'd drop my kids off to school, and then I'd put a podcast in, and it would vary from various TED Talks, psychology podcasts, whatever it might be. And I'd sit there and I'd listen and I'd learn. And I love going into the office and then going, hey, guess what I learned today on the way into work? And I'd share that with people. I don't get to do that so much anymore because I just carry on with work. And so it was a real reminder to me last week of, why don't you do this? Why don't you start your day with taking a little bit of a walk around the block, listening to a podcast, and then again sharing that with people? And that's just because we've developed a few crazy habits in COVID, So we've got to re-educate ourselves. We've got to re-motivate ourselves.
Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together. Big thank you to Ange McMenamin from WiseTech Global. Thank you so much. Kath, over to you.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Ange. So now that Ange has beautifully distilled for us the points around how to think about finding the best people, and as with all of these sessions, so much of it has humanity at its core. So just remembering, that's so much of what we do is thinking about the person in front of you and the entirety of their situation and how much generous thinking that actually takes. That's an amazing role. So now that you've kind of heard about how to find the best people, and we're next going to hear about how to not get them in the crosshairs of poachers once they're on board. But before we do, Lizelle Hughes from Microsoft is going to tell us what her team do to help scale-ups scale up. This is a 5-minute power session. Did you think I was going to say PowerPoint because she's from Microsoft? No, it's a 5-minute power slam dunk from her vantage point as the director of SaaS startups. Thanks, Lizelle.
Thank you, Kathy. No PowerPoint today. Absolutely not. My name's Lizelle Hughes, and I lead our SaaS partnerships business at Microsoft. And really what that means is that my team's really here to help scale up scale. Help them grow, help them acquire new customers, acquire new technology, build new technology, innovate in the Australian market. As you, I hail from Melbourne, and from sunny Melbourne, which I can say to some Sydney people, because I hear you Sydney-siders have been getting around in gumboots and an umbrella, but might need an arc soon, perhaps. So Microsoft, our mission at Microsoft is really to empower everyone on the planet to do more, which is really quite broad and esoteric. But what that actually means for you and what my team does for you, ultimately our team, my team, is here to help you innovate, to empower you, to help you innovate using Microsoft technology. And ultimately, we believe that we can reshape Australia's economy. I firmly believe that it is yourselves, this category of entrepreneurs, that is really going to change who Australia employs in the future. You're going to be the employers of the future. You're going to be the innovation that Australia is exporting on a world stage. So this category of new customers is really exciting for Microsoft, and we want to be here as your partnership to really help you grow and expand. It's really no secret that Australia, Sydney specifically here at the Startup Hub, there's a real thriving ecosystem of innovation, of growth. And we want to help you do two things. We want to help you grow your customers, and we want to help you grow your technology. So those are the two core things, and we're here to help you grow. If I can really close with 3 reasons that you should be thinking about Microsoft. The first is we're here to help you acquire new markets. So if you're a scale-up and you want access to new customers, new verticals, new industries, new marketplaces, new countries, new geographies, Microsoft has that global reach, and we want to be your partner to really help you do that. The second reason is your technology. And what we have is access for you to an amazing category of technologists. These technologists can help you architect your solutions, help you grow for scale, build security into it, but most importantly, help you reduce your bill with Microsoft as well. We can help you optimize. And then the third one is Microsoft has access to really large communities of organizations that can help you build your technology, grow your technology, access to VCs, access to incubators, access to accelerators, access to other like-minded individuals just like yourself. So those are the 3 reasons why I would really love for you to come chat to Microsoft. If you are a Microsoft person in the room, could you please raise your hand? There you go. There's some hands raised. So come work for it. Yes, if you use Microsoft technology, raise your hand. And so you know who to come chat to. Come chat to us. We'd love to be able to help you with any of your technology needs. Thank you.
Thanks, Lizelle. So now let's talk about how to build a poach-proof culture at a tech company.
Fantastic.
Right at the front.
Thank you. I'll borrow that as well, and I'll need some help with a Mac. I'm a Windows guy. I'll borrow. Yeah, no, right? I was actually asked originally, you had comfortable using this Mac, and I just stared at him blankly. So forgive me. I actually do have a PowerPoint because it's very easy for me, but I actually know what's on it as well. So this is really good for me to be here. I think the last 5 or so of my presentations have been in a webcam. And I don't know, how many people here have actually done presentations over a webcam? Hands up. The energy level you need to maintain when there is silence on the way back. Crack a joke, silence. It kills me. It absolutely kills me. So it's really good to be back in front of people and actually get some feedback. So expect that I'm going to be asking things, I'm going to be interacting, because I'm just so excited to be back in front of actual people and not, the occasional raised hand through Teams. Okay, so a little bit about who I am. My name's Anthony Kuchu. I'm the founder and CEO of Azure Consulting. We build, migrate, and manage solutions in Azure. I've been doing this in this game for about 7 years, but in IT for about 15. Aside from that, when I'm not doing IT, I am a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. Anybody know what that means? Don't mess with you. This man knows what's going on. Absolutely, killing machine. So, aside from that, I love coffee. That's pretty much everything you need to know about me. And what I'm going to talk about today is how you can create an unpoachable culture. As someone's been poached. So what I'm going to try to do today is walk through some of the things that we've done, some of the things that I've had in my experience that have been useful to be able to create a culture that reduces the probability of you being poached. As you start to grow, as you start to scale, people start to take notice of you. They start to, for me, I remember the first time I was talking to a customer and they knew who I was. Well, not necessarily me specifically, but the organization. I was like, hey, yeah, I'm Anthony from Azure. And they're like, yeah, I know who you are. I'm like, cool, kind of fangirling out, but keeping it cool because that's the kind of guy that I am. But that was a really amazing moment. But you also have to recognize that there's the other side of it. So as we started to grow, people started to know who we were. They started to kind of look very closely at your team. And then the question becomes, well, what have you done to make them as unpoachable as possible? And for us, one of our team members got an offer for $40,000 more, straight up. And that's incredible, right? And what's more incredible is he said no. He said no, right? But that wasn't enough. So they came back, they said, what about $50,000? Would you take $50,000 more? And he also said no. And so what I'm going to do is walk through some of the ideas, some of the mindsets, some of the things that I think are super useful so you can keep your people. Because it's really true when you said that they've got deep pockets, they've got money, they've got benefits, and you won't be able to match it. Question is, what can you do from a cultural perspective to make your people stay with you and want to stay with you long term? For me, I focus on the investment and retention. I think far too much time is spent and money is spent on actually finding people, or not nearly enough on actually keeping them. For us, we take the form of our recruitment function spends half their time finding new people and the other half internally in the business making sure people stay. Finding out what's going on with them. Finding out what the problems are, what they like, what would they change, how could they do their job a little differently. Taking as long as it needs to do to get that. Which leads to this part here, acting swiftly and decisively. By show of hands, how many people have ever been in a meeting where management's asked for your feedback? Hands up. Nice and tall. Come on. It'll be everyone. All right, now keeping those hands up, how many people have had that feedback disregarded? A lot, right? That's the experience, and it makes no sense. It makes absolutely no sense. So when we come to this, one of the things I try to do is, if it's something we can do right now, if there's feedback given, act on it immediately. If it's something small, just fix it. Do it there and then. If it's something bigger, make a plan, commit to it, and then fix it, and take immediate action. As our friend Tony Robbins likes to say, never leave the sight of a goal without taking some form of action, because you should. And then you've got a culture of taking action. So if anyone is going to leave, and you ask them, well, have you came to us? Have you told us what's going on? Because you've got a history of fixing things the moment they come to your eye. So it's a really good thing to have in your back pocket. Remove barriers to work. This is simple. When I talk to my sellers, I tell them this. I'd say, I want my sellers to sell. I want my engineers to engineer. I want my consultants to consult. It's a really simple idea. I try to get rid of anything that's in the way of you doing your job. It's as simple as that. It's kind of like you got a rock in your shoe and I want to get rid of it. I'm going to make the job as good as I can, but I can easily try and make it as not bad as possible, if you know what I mean. And this is a fun one because we talk about business and personal, and I hate it. Because to me, it's kind of like, well, you can be a sociopath between the hours of 9 and 5. But outside of that, I'm a really nice guy. Come over. And that doesn't sit right with me. And I think when we talk about culture and value alignment, people need to know you walk the walk, you talk the talk. And there's a lot of organizations out there that are talking the talk, but hey, don't you use sweatshops? Okay, that's strange. I mean, you are talking about, being environmentally friendly and social justice and all those great things, but don't you get some raw materials from some very questionable areas. And that lack of cohesion, that lack of, I guess, it just doesn't sit well with me. And I also want to make sure that when people are working with us, they know that we, like I said, we walk the walk. And when I started the business, I made a commitment that if it didn't ever align with me, if I did something that made me have to really change my values, that I'd walk away. Hey, KPIs. When I first started in IT, I was a desktop support. So it was the dude that goes and fixes Outlook. And by fix Outlook, I mean turn a computer on and off again. Don't ask me how it broke. I don't know how it broke. I just know how to fix it, which is to turn it off and on. So I was eager to not do that job, as you could imagine. Like it's a necessary job, but it was one I was eager not to do. So I was in the business of getting industry certs. So I figured, hey, you know, what's the average that someone might need for an industry cert? One, two a year, get some good recognition. So come KPI time, this guy's going to be in good stead. So I felt, well, let's not do 1 or 2. No, not this guy. 11 in 1 year, and I thought for sure I'm going to get an amazing pay rise. I didn't. Spoiler, sorry. And what ended up happening was instead I was talking to a person with a list of KPIs. There would have been about 3 pages of them, about 20 of them. Most of them qualitative. I've no idea if they even applied to me, but he just said, look, where you're at, your pay grade, it's only, you can really get 5% at best. Within a month, I moved and doubled my pay. But had they offered me $10,000 or $15,000 more, recognizing what I'd done, I likely would have stayed. And so with me, I stick to 3 KPIs. It's super hard because you always want to give people more, but 3 is measurable. And then I make sure that whatever they can do, they're attainable, they're realistic. So the smart thing for goal setting, because that's what we can work with. And if you hit these 3 goals, then we can do more. Don't sweat the little things. Really simply, don't micromanage. You mentioned earlier, people are increasingly working remotely, working from home. I tell people, if I go look over your shoulder, you probably shouldn't be here. And increasingly, that's super important because, to be honest, micromanagement just doesn't make sense. Hire smart. I think at the end of the day, Tony Robbins. Anyone here familiar with Tony Robbins? Yeah? Cool dude. He spoke about relationships, and what he said was 90% is selection. And it's true. We can train people on capability, and you mentioned this, but fit, you can't train fit. It's very difficult. People change, but not nearly as often. It's far easier to find the right person and train them up than to get the wrong one and try to make them fit. It simply won't work. And lastly, recognizing great work. So when I talk about this, it's really simple. It's about being thoughtful. It's about being earnest. It's not just saying, hey, here's a gift card, thank you, for whatever it was, for doing really well. It's about it being actually specific, calling someone out, calling out what they've actually done. So when you give people feedback, say, hey, what you did there was really awesome. Because it's not just about money and benefits. It's about recognition. So take the time to offer thoughtful recognition. For me, I won't be able to tell you what my Q3 FY19 earnings were, but I could tell you when one of our guys broke down after a really lovely note and thought we gave him after a death in the family. I remember those sorts of things, and so do they. I don't have any tattoos, but if I did, I'd have that word on there. Manage expectations. It's incredibly important. Manage expectations with customers, employees, whatever you do. When you get into our business, the first thing you're going to know is what you're going to do. We're also going to tell you what failure looks like. Because we're not just going to paint the bullseye around what you need to do through 3 KPIs. We'll also tell you what failure looks like. Do this. And we will correct it quickly, act swiftly and decisively. So if you veer from the course, we'll make sure you know. And this is the attitude we have with our customers as well. Lead from the front. I mean, this is one of those kind of oldie but a goodie. There are so many things in business that people just say, that's just common sense. Then why aren't you doing it? And so when I look at this leading from the front, I say, in this job, I've done everything. So at one point I was doing the books, and I've been doing accounts, I've logged forms, I've been on call, I've done every single role in this business. And that gives me a certain authority when I start talking to people about what I want them to do. there was never a role or something I'd asked them to do that I haven't done myself, because what I want to avoid is that situation where your manager's breathing down your neck, and it happens before, and they're saying, you need to take this hard line with the customer. You tell them, they're not getting a dime out of us. And I'm like, yeah, I can tell you're not telling the customer that. I'm having to do that. So one of the things that I keep in mind for me is that I've done that. I've had those hard conversations. So when I'm talking to people, I'm realistic about what I expect from them. And I never tell them to do something I wouldn't do myself. And finally, this is a bit of a different one. It's around a mentality around staying humble. I consider humility to be like a superpower, because what it allows me to do and what it allows my team to do is take feedback from anywhere, any place, and any time. The real resistance you want to have and what you want to avoid is that when feedback comes in, you don't want to be in the way of it. You want to be able to assess, is it accurate? And if so, can I implement it? And the last thing you want to have be in the way is yourself. So to bring it all together, because it's a bit of a whirlwind, and there's only 2 key ideas I'd take from here. And the first one would simply be staying humble. And then the second idea would be to invest in retention, because far too much attention has been put on finding new people and not nearly enough on keeping the ones you got. So thank you very much, guys.
Thanks, Anthony. Definitely got Tony Robbins vibes from that. We are now going to close with an electric conversation about lessons learned. And I would say there might be some tattoos shared with us about lessons that have been learnt. Maybe not. But please, can I welcome to the stage Simon Thurlow, Rochelle Nichols, and Peter Brocklebank.
Right, anyone else here a black belt?
No.
Okay, yeah, Michelle, that'd be right. Rochelle, yes. Guys, that was, Anthony, thank you for that. That was absolutely amazing, and there was a whole bunch of stuff. AJ, I hope you were taking notes. AJ is my boss. But that was a cracking presentation, and I just think if you use all of those as guiding principles, you won't go too far wrong. So we're going to build on 2 very clever people and what they've been talking about, but I am going to kick off. We've got Simon, Rochelle, and Peter here. Rochelle. I will get. Yeah, exactly. My apologies. You can call me whatever I want. Oh, that was the thing I was going to say about Zoom meetings. The great thing is that people don't laugh at my jokes, so I didn't miss it when I was doing the Zoom meetings. That was quite successful as a strategy. All right, guys, I'm going to get you to just briefly introduce yourselves, how you came into being, your companies, and kind of maybe some opening remarks about how you think about talent. Simon?
Hi, Simon Thurlow, CEO of Parallel. We are a services provider to the SaaS industry. Thank you, Aubrey. We came to address that market because we got introduced to a SaaS company 8 years ago who needed a bit of help to scale and grow. And so I really fell in love with the sector as opposed to dealing with corporates and enterprise. It was far more interesting. And sorry, what was your second point?
Second point was talent. Give some thoughts on sort of how do you think about talent and getting good people? The scarcest resource available at the moment, really, for us. I wonder if, Anthony, when you greet your new employees, do you introduce yourself as the killing machine and that's why they don't leave?
Funny story, there's actually a better black belt.
Right, yeah. But it's interesting, I actually just spoke to, we are owned ultimately by a Norwegian company with 3,000 people. And I just spoke to them today about how we look after talent and try and retain them, because it is the biggest issue. And really, it's about I guess our philosophy is don't give them a reason to leave, and it's actually not that hard. Sure, you can't compete with the offshore companies who are now coming in to take our people away. I did a quick search a couple of days ago for roles advertised on Seek, and lots of people aren't even bothering anymore because it's almost pointless. But for DevOps engineers, for example, there are about 5,500 businesses looking for DevOps engineers. That's what we're competing with. if you search AWS, it's about 7,000, about the same for Azure. So, it's just super difficult. So yeah, fundamentally, don't give them a reason to leave. And I can talk about that for hours if anyone wants to later.
My name is Rochelle Nichols. I am the CEO and founder of Nico Global. My background, I'm actually a lawyer, and I started Nico in 2019, and really it was just about helping enterprises, consumer-centric enterprises, understand their customers better in a really 360 personalised way, delivering digitised ecosystems, streamlining everything, allowing them to collect that data, and create those more long-term relationships. From a talent perspective, it's interesting. In a startup, you are the talent mostly for the first however long. You've got no money, you're bootstrapping everything. And so, from that perspective, I think being a startup, I've always thought about it as a scale up, and I've always gone, when it comes to talent and it comes to resources, and as you're saying, they're so scarce these days, as is money normally when you're a startup. I went about creating enterprise relationships. From a tech perspective, from a sales perspective, that to me felt like the best way to start to, I guess, make your mark in the industry that you were going after without spending millions of dollars. And then from a team perspective, I very much am on the side of finding fit. People, relationships. Trust is so important when you start a business. Particularly because oftentimes you'll take anything for a bucket of chicken almost. You're often very desperate, and so you have to be careful with who you surround yourself with, because you are somewhat vulnerable to an extent, particularly early on. So for me, those core people in your strategic team as relationships is the most important thing, and then building partnerships around you of those bigger enterprise scales really helps to create that foundation to launch off.
The one great thing about being small is you can give yourself really good 360s. So, you're always hopefully happy with yourself and improving every day. Pete, tell us about Being Iconic.
Yeah, hi, I'm Pete, MD of Being Iconic. We're a scale-up consultant specialist. We help startups scale. Challenging, as I'm sure you all know, and the main reason it's challenging is because of our resource. You have to move outside the founders and actually hire people to do roles that you've probably done yourselves. It's been fascinating hearing what everybody else was saying earlier on today. Angie, I very much agree with what you were saying about happiness in the workplace. It costs a lot of money to hire people, so hiring people, spending money and then them leaving 6 months later it's a nightmare, and it can kill companies. So I agree with what everybody else here was saying about retention. I actually practice happiness in the workplace. There's a great book that I'd recommend by a guy called Sean Anker, if you haven't read it, called The Happiness Advantage. It all talks about positive psychology, about simple things like saying hello to people in the morning, making people have lunch, so not everybody sat at their desk if you are in the office. So, my advice would be, look at happiness of your staff. The other part is embrace difference. Okay, as you grow, you're going to be recruiting a lot of different people. My background is I ran an advertising agency for 20 years in London before I came to Australia 3 years ago. So I'm pretty much fresh off the boat. And I've hired designers, developers, and what used to be called suits, because in the old world of advertising, people used to wear suits. I can't remember the last time I had to wear a tie. But getting people who code to have a conversation with developers, it's interesting. Developers are often headphones on, head down. Creative people need space. They need time to breathe. If they're going to come up with brilliant ideas, you give them deadlines and put them under stress, they won't come up with good ideas. So understanding the difference in psychology of people and making that workforce happy is really important.
Thank you. Welcome all. We kind of briefly touched on the people side, but part of the theme of this is also sort of founder lessons in scaling teams, partners and providers. And you touched on it briefly there, Rochelle. I do want to sort of talk about how do you pick the right people to partner with? I talked about mergers and acquisitions a little bit earlier, and that's one solution in Scalers. But often, and there's a whole bunch of providers, and you guys are on both sides of that equation, how do you decide who the right people, the right company are to partner as you scale your business?
Yeah, I think from my perspective, I was kind of working backwards from the end goal of where I wanted to get to. I knew that I had a solution that I was going to be wanting to sell to enterprises globally. And so what I had to do first and foremost, well, you've got to get a product and, you know, firstly. And so going and looking at that enterprise grade, you know, garages that can build things for you, that are going to build things in a way that if you do take it to a bank or if you do take it to an airline, they're going to listen to you. They're going to, you know, these kind of enterprise partnerships have those relationships already. So they trust the technology, they trust who's bringing you there. So that was really the way that I went about it, was looking into the industry and saying, you know, who are those large players that have the relationships that I want, and have the I guess the trust with those customers that I'm looking for, and then just spending time with them. And you know, I think again, as I was saying, sometimes when you're a startup, you'll take anything, and I think oftentimes the most important thing that I have learnt is, you know, take your time. If these large enterprise partnerships are talking to you, or enterprises themselves are talking to you about a potential relationship or partnership, that means you've got something. You've got something that is potentially interesting to them. So take your time. Get to know them. Don't say yes to everything. And you'll learn. Time is, for me, the only way really to figure out whether you're a fit with anyone or anything.
Peter, is it also about getting 28 lawyers reading the fine print on page 738 of the contract?
No, it's I mean, one of the great things with Australia, I mean, I've worked globally with a lot of businesses, is it truly is an amazing place for companies to scale with fantastic partners, easy access to fantastic partners. You know, unfortunately, I'm a POM for my sins, you can tell from the accents, but you know, London, very competitive place. You've got thousands and thousands of companies all trying to speak to these partners. You know, this event and the partners who are here today to give you the support. But again, following on from what was said earlier about using your network, you know, in order for you to be able to scale, you have to focus on what you're brilliant at. Okay, it's really easy to hire somebody, give them a role, it doesn't quite work, and you just go, oh, that hasn't worked, I'll take it back. So finding a partner that can help you focus, that can help you understand where your genius is, which is obviously in the setup of your business, and having some good consultants or some good partners or some good people that you can pull on, some mentors, which through your network, through partners like you might find today, is really, really important. And there's plenty of them around. You know, just ask people today and you'll find them. There's plenty around.
Simon, is it a case that we should, as a startup or as a scale-up, think in more modular terms and sort of partnering for that growth rather than sort of taking people on board? And how do you make that decision between one way or the other, which way you go?
That's a very good question. I think if I think about how we will typically engage with a SaaS business, probably sweet spot is they're going through a period of hyper growth. They've got product market fit. Development team is, you know, overwhelmed with trying to keep up with feature demand and so on. And there are platform problems taking them away from building features and so on, which slows the whole business down and causes a domino effect of badness. I think if you're in that sort of scenario, especially today, it's pretty difficult to find the people to solve that problem for you if you want to recruit them yourself. You know, you're competing with Zapier, Google. It's not just the dudes next door. So, you know, that's a bit of a, you know, a self-interest comment. Obviously, we're a service provider, but certainly that's the feedback we're getting from plenty of our customers. From a partnering perspective, I think, you know, what really makes it successful, I think it's if the partnership is a partnership, not a partnership by name, and that's where there is a mutually beneficial relationship, you know, that truly pans out that way. And I think one of the key ways that works the best is if there is a cultural alignment between those two organisations that are partnering. If there isn't, it's not going to be good. You know, it'll end poorly. An example is actually us providing services to someone else and bringing a partner in to do stuff that we didn't do, and they weren't culturally aligned to the way that we operate, and so therefore there was a customer dissatisfaction with the partner, and not with us, but by reflection onto us, and it just doesn't work. So that cultural alignment's really important. I think from a provider perspective, and if we think of public cloud providers, what is your the public cloud providers? Then it's the Microsoft event, so let's talk about the benefits that Microsoft can bring. Lizelle sort of touched on it earlier. There are programs within Microsoft that will help you grow your business by connecting you into verticals, that you might want to approach. And so making sure that you're building on top of the platform that, that has really great access into those verticals that you want to address or into the target markets that you're after is a key thing to look for, I think, in terms of partnering with platform providers.
Well, I don't want this to be a Dorothy Dixer to you guys, but you just made me think about, given the problems that we have with getting talent and sort of trying to build that way, are we thinking about build, and do we need to think about build in a different way now and think about building an ecosystem of partners to get your company to grow rather than trying to sort of get various divisions in on your own payroll?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, definitely. I don't know where the phrase Kevin Bacon came from, but the Kevin Bacon 6 degrees of separation, that if you haven't heard of it, just Google it, is a really interesting one. The world's
original meme. That was one of the, before Elon Musk started doing memes, that one was there.
I know, and it's fascinating, and it's true. If you need help as you scale, which you will, you'll find someone. And of course, when you want to hire someone full time, hire them full time. But to start with, and just to give a bit of rope as you scale, look at hiring a consultant, look at hiring a freelance resource, look at hiring somebody who does it for somebody else who you know. And as I say, with great things like LinkedIn and all the other networking portfolios you can find, and the same for recruitments. Have a look through your network, and you can build a great team. And a lot of the companies that we help scale, I would say more than 50% of their staff to start with are not full-time hires. They're part-time hires, or they're consultants, or they're agencies, or they're networks, but they're trusted partners, and that's the hard part, which is why using your network is important, because if you can bring someone in who you know as a partner or consultant or an agency that somebody you know and trust has worked with, it helps you relax. It's really stressful when you spend money with using a partner, and if it doesn't work, you don't know whether it's because it's the wrong partner, whether you didn't spend enough, whether you didn't give them the right brief. So having a partner that you know has worked well for one of your network is my advice.
Rochelle?
Yeah, I 100% agree, and it's exactly what I've done. I think I did it by accident, though it wasn't. I'd love to say that I intended to do it, but I think it really was looking at what I had from a financial and resource perspective and thinking, well, where do I want to focus? As I said, I was a lawyer. I worked in corporate. I saw what human resources had to go through. I saw the amount of energy that you had to put into when you did hire people. And so I thought, well, that's a lot of time and energy and money. I'm going to focus on the product, and I'm going to, as you're saying, leverage these enterprise relationships that I have, not just from a product perspective, but from, introducing, as you're saying, consultants, teams that can come and work with you temporarily on projects. And when you do that, particularly as a startup, you start to get a greater sense of what it is that you're looking for in the future, and you can start to build more confidence around making those hires when the time is right, because you've been able to use the ecosystems around you that are tried and true, and from a reputation perspective, they're pretty spot on.
Simon, I'm going to start this with you, but I do want you all to answer this one. Do you think there are specific roles, responsibilities that are best suited to an internal hire? Maybe CEO and founder, of course, but aside from that, within the business, as opposed to some that are better off when you're sort of coming with a partner and an agency to find the solution?
I think if we think it probably preaching to the converted, but obviously you're all wanting to ramp the revenue growth rate. If you can achieve that, then you'll get a good round next time, and the world is a happy place. So to achieve that, certainly from our experience, there's 4 primary things to focus on: people, product, prospects, and customers. So really needing to nail those. Anything other than focusing on those, and there's probably, we could argue that there's a couple of others you should do as well. If you're not focusing on those, then you're impacting the growth rate, and therefore you're impacting the valuation and the multiple and the dilution rate and blah, blah, blah. So So focusing in on that, and everything else that's around it that doesn't contribute to that, do you really need to do it? Yes, I think you'll need someone who understands fully the nuance of your product to be able to lead marketing, but do you need the MarTech people to, spin the wheel, so to speak? You probably don't. From an HR perspective, there's plenty of good, outsourced HR providers who can do most of it for you. My HR, which I think is here as well, is fabulous. They've got a service with unlimited access to consultants as well as all the employment agreements and so on. So all of those sort of non-productive things, I think, should be out. But certainly the things that contribute to to the growth of the business, then the nuance of it, the bespokeness of your business, should probably be in-house. From our perspective of working with lots of SaaS companies, even having some DevOps capability in-house is ideal in terms of knowing the really bespoke nature of whatever your business is doing. But to do the legwork of it, you don't need to have that yourself.
Yeah, somewhat similar to what you're saying. From my perspective, I would what I have done is have key leads or heads of that sit inside my business. And then we kind of bring in the other teams or consulting teams or what have you to kind of work underneath them. So, for me, your CFO, your financial, that needs to be in-house, obviously. That goes without saying. Your product or your head of tech, obviously. Your PR and your marketing. For me, to have someone that is controlling the narrative, you can use your partners to push out the marketing and do things like that. But for me, it's always about what do you need to control and make sure that is representative of you. Not because, partners will do the wrong thing by you, but of course, they have other considerations and lots of other things that they're taking into account. So that, to me, has always been, the most important couple of key aspects key, resources to have inside that are yours to nurture, to make sure everything underneath is kind of staying in line with your vision and your goals and the outcomes that you're seeking.
As well as people, the other two things that will... Sorry, this microphone's a bit different, so I have to hold it a bit further, less away. The two things that potentially you'll struggle with as you scale will be your proposition. So as you scale, by nature, you're moving from selling to early adopters to the mass market. So you need to get your value proposition right and your brand right. And stop talking about the tech and the features, because nobody cares. That's hard, okay? And where a lot of companies fail is they'd hire a CMO to do that. A CMO wouldn't do that. So my advice in marketing would be, you need doers. You need people who have the narrative of the business, that can look after your social media, that can answer responses. But you need some pretty clever strategic thinkers to get your brand and your narrative right at the top. Develop a plan and then have a team to build that plan. Once that plan's built and you've got revenue coming through, then you can hire top-level marketeers. And we've done that for a few businesses in Sydney. The second part, which is really important, which again, if you don't get it right, you'll struggle, is operations. It sounds really simple, and unfortunately with modern day technology and all the various systems you can have, I've worked with quite a few clients and they all have different ones, which makes it a nightmare because I probably have to work with about 20. Whether it's Slack, whether it's Confluence, whether it's Asana, whether it's Mondays, I could go on till the cows come home. Having somebody in your business who's in charge of your operations would be really, really important as you scale. You don't need it right at the beginning, so getting it right, timing is important, but somebody who can run your ops, and they'll flex, they can do lots of different things as well. But that would be a good internal hire as well.
You actually reminded me that I think a week or two ago I did a report, or I covered a report that someone from Sydney Uni Business School and another company worked on, which pointed out that the vast majority of Australian mid-sized tech companies sell the steak and not the sizzle, and it's way out of whack with the rest of the world. We spend too much time talking about the engine and forgetting about how good it feels to drive the car.
One more point, if that's okay. Just reflecting on actually development resource and who cuts your code. I think maybe only 3-4% of our customers don't have a development team themselves. These are non-tech founders who are specialists in the business problem that they're solving, and they don't know how to do anything, so they go and hire a team to build the app for them, and within, I don't know, 2 years maybe, they are wanting to in-house it. So they all do, and it's sort of perceived to be the IP, if you like, of your business, and I get it. A question, I guess, as we move into the scarcity of resource mode that we're in now, is that still a thing? You know, can you still find the people to build your product for you? You know, I think, you know, there's tons of empty roles, right, that can't be filled. So I think there needs to be another answer to that problem as well.
Just mention the other hard part with all of that is finance, which is a horrible word to use, but at some point have a think about finance, because finance will help facilitate scale. Finding the right partner to help give you the funds you need to help you recruit the right people or right partners is fundamental. And having that conversation early and getting somebody in who can advise you on that, so you can see a clear path of where you're going to get to, rather than sort of always, you know, pushing water uphill. Having a bit of money behind you to help you hire the right people, I think would be a good foundation part as well.
Now, let's say a perfect world, we've got them all on, but I'm starting to think that a little bit like basically my streaming bill right now, you know, there is Netflix, there's Binge, there's Disney Plus, there's all of them. How do you keep track, and are there any pitfalls around you end up with more services, more subscriptions, more than you ever actually need, and you're kind of basically burning your cash from bolting on too many additions? Is it an issue? This is kind of like me and my gym membership. We don't actually have a strong relationship.
Yes, absolutely. If I can speak to it from a sort of public cloud cost perspective, absolutely it is. Pretty much everyone will be wasting money. It's almost guaranteed. Developers, bless you, you're fabulous at creating stuff and fabulous at leaving it behind you as you move on to something else. Unfortunately, that costs money. So it's not difficult to be proactive about that stuff, about getting some waste detection in place, getting some, you know, good processes to look after stuff in terms of life cycle, and making sure that someone's day job is to manage cost. It needs to be someone's day job.
Flip side of this too, because I do want you to address this, is the leveraging of it so that you do get better value.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, cash is king, right? And in a startup, it's your oxygen. So extending that cash runway is absolutely essential.
Michelle?
Yeah, I mean, again, going back to the enterprise relationships that I do have, I mean, there's a handful of them, and they kind of serve different purposes. And so I've been very fortunate that I've been guided very well by these relationships and these executives that are effectively sponsoring this business to, you know, manage costs and manage, as you're saying, the subscriptions and the things that we're taking on. I mean, as you say, these things can tick over. Sometimes I get, you know, in the early days we would get invoices and I'd think, wow, they're not eating this week. But that was purely just part of my learning, part of their learning as well. But I think for me as well, these enterprises are relationships that need to be, I guess, managed, and you give a lot of energy to. So there's not a lot of room to be taking on too much, at least at my level anyway. And so I'm very fortunate, again, with the relationships that I have and the advice and the guidance that they give to manage those side of things for me.
Just very briefly, I mean, you've covered it there. It's two things. Firstly, again, ops. So somebody in ops would keep a check on that. The second part, again, would be looking at potentially an outsourced CFO. So a full-time CFOs are pretty expensive, but there's plenty of good resource out there for an outsourced CFO that can look at your books, look at your figures, look at what you're spending. Somebody who's actually scaled a business before and knows what you should be spending on tech, you know, and the likes, would be really useful.
Simon, Rochelle touched on this earlier in terms of taking your time, but I do want to ask about how do you go about ensuring the right fit? How do you sort of make sure that you are taking on the right partners? And are there any specific red flags that you should keep an eye out for, a tell somewhere along the way?
I guess coming back to what I mentioned before about the cultural fit is a really big indicator of success or not.
How do you test that, though? That's the interesting part, you know. It's like, yes, you want someone who's going to fit, but how do we sort of really drill down? What are your tips and tricks for drilling down to know that you are taking on the right person? Because, of course, it's kind of like, you know, that Tinder date. Everyone is charming and brilliant at the start. It's only later on that you kind of find out sort of a few of the other parts that you really didn't want to sign on for.
Yeah. Well, okay.
I was speaking for my wife on that one.
I think, do they demonstrate that they have your best interests at heart? Are they treating the relationship with you, if they talk about partnership, are they demonstrating that they're treating the relationship with you like a marriage, where you know, compromise is required for long-term harmonious relationship? And I think that's a pretty clear indicator of the way that partner might perceive you, you know, when faced with adversity. You know, everyone's, you know, the Tinder thing, right? We're all looking fabulous when we're on the app, but, you know, it's a moment of adversity that really shows the true colours of the partnership. So, yeah, I guess that's a good litmus test to judge it by.
Rochelle, do you want to drill down into earlier, as you said, you know, go slow on it?
Yeah, I mean, as much as you can go slow. I mean, obviously when you're in startup, you're trying to go 100 miles an hour so you can eat. But you know, even with my background as a lawyer, my job was to assess risk in terms of relationships and things like that. And even with all that training and all of that experience, I still had to go through weeks and months with, you know, whether it be those kinds of enterprise relationships or whether it be actually just even individuals that you're trying to decide whether to bring on board. You really have to go through a few different seasons before you can get a good grasp on people. I mean, sometimes you can see straight away, but oftentimes things don't really reveal themselves until you've had a few different scenarios. And so for me, I think the thing that, you know, as woo-woo as it sounds, there's a lot of gut checking that has to happen along the way. There's, you know, asking questions. Do the answers make sense to you? You know, I mean, I've had situations where, you know, contracts were offered and it sounds all great, and then you read the fine print and you realise you're paying for like a lot of money that wasn't ever really said to you up front. So I think, you know, when people are willing to be transparent, to say things that are not necessarily comfortable or fun or, like, you know, as you said, charming on the first date sort of thing, you know, it's a process. We've all had, I'm sure, various experiences with different types of characters. I'm still at the point where I still have to give almost like a probationary period, like in my head, not that I say that to people, but in my mind I'm always thinking, okay, we'll see. You have to be open, because if you're too closed off, you're going to also miss great people and great relationships as well.
Off the back of that, I do want to ask you about the difficult conversation when it's not working. How do you guys tackle that, and when should you act? You know, we generally have an inkling and you go on for a while, keeping the relationship metaphor going. You know, you stay in a relationship for a little bit longer than you should sometimes, realise only later on at great cost. When and how do you tackle it? Pete?
For partners or for recruits, or both?
Or all, yep.
For both. I'm glad Rochelle mentioned earlier on gut. We're maybe a bit older than some of the people in this room, or maybe not all, but my experience is your gut is often right. I mean, there's a reason why it's called the gut feeling. My advice would be act quick. If you feel something's wrong, it pretty much always is wrong. Every time I've kept somebody on as a hire, or I've kept a partner on as a partner, 6 months later, I've said to my business partner, like, oh, we should have just followed what we thought. Obviously, you need to try and alleviate that at the start, and I'm very much a believer, particularly nowadays with the world and the way it is, that and what Angie was saying earlier on is buy into people. So when you're choosing a partner in particular, they're going to have good salespeople, so everyone can sell, but you've got to buy into people. And again, this is why your network's important. If you can speak to somebody who you know in your network and challenge them as to what you're looking for, you know, if you need a social media agency, or you need a hosting company, whatever it is, you need some developers, just ask somebody within Fishburners who they're using, who they hired, what recruiter they used. It's all going to be based on trust, and trust is a word. I mean, if somebody ever says it to you, don't trust them. It's a bit like, you know, anyone goes into a pub and says, trust me, you wouldn't. So you know, when partners have trust in their values and their vision, that has to be earned, and that can only be earned by partners. So use your network, and follow your guts. If it doesn't feel right, it probably isn't.
I think a moment of adversity with a partner is a fabulous opportunity, because now you get the chance to see how they're going to behave and how they view the partnership with you. And an awful, so a reality of that is, if they bugger something up and you need to talk to them about it, you should do it quickly, you know, so that it's a fresh thing. Be non-emotional, factual, and give them the opportunity to fix it. And if you see that they do that really well, then you know that in a moment of adversity, they're a great partner to have. From a people perspective, if you think that someone isn't right and you should do something about it, your team already thinks it, and they're looking at you going, why aren't you taking action on it? And your respect from that team is eroding. So don't muck around. You know, if you've got the wrong person or there's something going on, be respectful with the person. You know, find out if there's something. Quite often it's nothing to do with work that might be impacting their performance. Try and get to the bottom of it and be empathetic, but you have to take action swiftly.
Rochelle?
I had that exact situation like a week ago, but I won't go into that at the moment. But I will say that, you know, just building on the gut thing, which again, I know it sounds a little bit old school, but the other thing that I always leverage as well is that I have an advisory board that have no vested interest in my company's success, other than wanting to see it be successful. So they're not paid, they don't get any shares, they don't get anything. These are people from 4 different people from all different types of backgrounds who I meet with, whether it be once a week, once a month, what have you. And so in conjunction with that gut, being able to go to these people individually and talk them through what's going on and just kind of get that kind of sage wisdom and advice as well, has been very helpful, because oftentimes they're just telling you what you already know anyway. And the same thing, your team, you trust a team, like my team members I trust with my life, and not because they've told me to, but because over the period of time you just get to know people. And you hold on to those people really, really tightly, as much as you can, and create a culture where it's okay to make mistakes. Be transparent about it. It's kind of like that thing, when you're a kid and you do something wrong and your dad yells at you, and then you're never going to tell him when you stuff up ever again. And I've always remembered that. Sorry, Dad, for some reason. So I think that, for me, it's always, as you're saying, about, being calm, and like, we all make mistakes. We all mess up. And having that culture to allow people to come and say, oh, I've done something. And if they don't, well then, that's enough information usually for me to be able to go, oh, this is maybe not the right fit here.
Yeah, and I suppose picking up on Anthony's thing earlier about being open to feedback, such an important part. I try to be a good dad with my son and sort of say, oh mate, I'm still doing that nowadays, don't worry about it, you just try and get better along the way. We're going to throw it open to questions, and anyone online who has some too. We kind of went down some pretty tough and sort of slightly dark paths there. So I'm going to go back to where you started, talking about happiness. And I did write down the name of the book, The Happiness Advantage by Sean Archer. Anchor. Sorry, yes, I can't even read my own writing at this point. No wonder I can't pronounce your name properly, Rochelle. Sorry. What trick do you guys have to basically lift the mood, lift the room? Everyone's got one, I reckon. What do you guys do when you walk into the group and it's not quite there, and you really just want to provide that sort of adrenaline injection?
I wouldn't say there's one trick. I mean, if there was one trick, everybody would just do it. You have to live and breathe it. Yeah. And understanding the importance of people being happy in your workplace would be my starting point. It sounds very sentimental. I come from a science background. My wife comes from a completely different background. It was my wife who got me into all of this, by the way, so I blame her. But I truly believe it. Positive psychology is a massive thing, and small little things, triggers. So, I mean, one of the nicest things I remember when I came to Australia was the fact that when you get off the bus in the morning, people say thank you to the bus driver. That doesn't happen in London, by the way. People would think you're a weirdo if you say thank you to the bus driver. But that little thing, just saying thank you to someone, asking people when you come into work, how was your weekends? Are you doing anything tonight? Just all these little triggers, all this positive psychology makes a big difference. So there's small things. It's not one big thing. It's small little things.
Yeah. Rochelle?
Yeah, I would say the same thing. I think the trick for me, and I learnt the hard way, you know, in 2020 I ended up in a hospital bed and I was very sick and, you know, was told I had a fatal cancer, which turned out not to be true. That was fun. But for me, what I realised is that I was not looking after myself at all. I was going 100, I was doing this, the stock standard startup founder thing of going 100 miles an hour, you know, I was gonna get there, but I was gonna collapse across the finish line sort of thing. And I realised the effect that my energy had on anything and everything else to do with the business as well. And so I had to completely change everything. And I think that is the trick, because I realised people buy into people, not products. And it's the same for the people that work with you and the people that partner with you. And so my priority now is my energy, my balanced approach, my positivity, my alignment, all that sort of stuff. And I've seen how different that feels to anyone and everything around the business and the outcomes that are coming as a result of that. So, and that allows me to be more relaxed and more, you know, crack jokes and be a bit of a clown and all that sort of stuff that has that flow-on effect, because it is genuine.
Simon.
I don't think we're that good at, well, I'm not that good at celebrating stuff, and I'm conscious of that. I think it's, you know, as a founder, CEO, you're just continually ploughing ahead, you know, solving problems and you know, going to the next phase or step. And it's really easy to not stop, look back and go, bloody hell, we've done all that. You know, so I think being mindful of that, and the way I consciously do that, and three of my team here, so hopefully I'm not making shit up, but every Monday morning we have an all hands. It's the whole company. Yeah. And you know, there's a lot of people virtual, and we're starting to get people back in the office. And we sort of go around the different parts of the business, and I speak last. And I just I might have collected a few good things that have happened in the previous week, but I'm picking up on what the team is saying. And every Monday, I'm just blown away by the fabulous things that are happening. And so I'll sort of echo those and make sure that I amplify the ones that are really important. And normally there's some good strategic news to talk about as well. So I don't know if that's true, team. I think it is.
Yeah, yeah. Quick 360. I think that's all awesome advice. If you've got a question here, put your hand up. But I'm going to go to Cassandra, who says, what key questions answers should you come to a partnership meeting with when starting out? What key questions and answers should you come to a partnership meeting with when starting out? So in terms of your prep,
KPIs for a partner. If you're looking at a partnership, understanding from both sides what success means, and that doesn't just mean more sales. By the way, it can mean lots of different things. It could just mean we're still working together in 6 months. It could be a recruitment partner. So you can get very specific with your KPIs, but you can get quite emotive with them as well. So understanding what success looks like, and that's not just with a partnership. That's with anybody, because the same with your staff. If your team don't understand what they need to do, and have clear goals and objectives, you know, OKRs and things like that. There's lots of acronyms that people use nowadays, but clear objectives that people are aiming towards, then they just don't understand at the end of the period whether it works or not.
Your GSDs nowadays, I think.
I would say that's spot on. I think particularly from a startup, and you go and you have enterprise or partnership conversations with enterprises, and success to them might be $100 million, and success to you might be like $100,000. And so those, finding channels. I've had conversations with enterprises where we're not going to hit that revenue mark that's success to you, but from a PR perspective and from a story perspective, that might align as well. So there's lots of different ways that you can kind of skin that cat. It's a horrible saying, but yeah, I'm just echoing what you're saying, to be super clear about what they're looking for, because if you're not, and vice versa, if you're not, you can get yourself into a bit of a trouble.
I mean, I see it all the time working with agencies, and it's quite interesting in my new role, because I'm not an agency anymore, but I hire agencies for partners. And it's amazing what agencies think is success. And then you put it in front of the client, and the client's just looking and going, that's just nonsense. You know, PR agencies that think that organising a party
Your Cannes Award is not my success.
Exactly. But that's because it wasn't aligned at the beginning. So it's not the agency's fault. The brief was wrong.
Simon, you in furious agreement with all of this? And while I've got you though, also, what skills and characteristics do you need to make partnerships work?
I'm a man, I can only do one thing at a time. The
prep for the meeting.
Yeah, I think like having very clear commercials to understand, you know, as I think we mentioned, is there a line down the bottom that says, I'm going to, you know, take your firstborn? Having that understood. I think a good litmus test is, hey, this, what if in, you know, 4 months in of a 12-month contract, it's not really working for us, can we tap out? You know, can we do a 30, 60 day no fault exit? And if they say no, then they're probably worried about something. And if they say yes, they're probably not. The ROI thing is good, I think, not to bag marketers, but try and get a marketing company to give you an ROI on a campaign. Good luck. Which is, I know it's hard, but yeah, that sort of thing I think is pretty important. Yeah, and another one is who will look after me once I've signed?
Yeah.
Like, how do you do that? And you know, and get this sort of customer success process or whatever.
Just one more. Be humble enough to know you need help. So it's very easy to ask somebody for help, and then if they get it wrong, you blame them. You need to let them do what you're asking them to do and follow their advice. And if it doesn't work at the end of the day, there's something wrong there. But if you brief somebody to help you and then you pull it back and don't let them do what you've asked them to do, it doesn't work from either side.
Yeah.
So you need to trust the partner you're asking to do the work.
I think that's one of the skills and characteristics we need. Anything else you guys want to add? Are there any questions from the floor? You've been very... Well, we've got one right down the back. Here, I'll run down. Watch this. Look at this pace.
I'm sorry to make you run, mate.
Well, I didn't get to the gym today, so I'll just...
Thank you, panel. My name's Rowan. This is a question in regards to finding the fitness of your team at a scalable measure. Do you implement Myers-Briggs, DISC, those types of methodologies to understand who the person is that you're developing a relationship with to eventually hire them in a scalable way? I think it's a little bit easier with a smaller startup to sort of develop those relationships, but are there methods to do it as you scale?
Yeah, I mean, you've answered it for me. I don't. At my stage, I'm old school and do the relationship side of things. I do think there is value to those kinds of tests, although I did one about a year and a half ago for a friend of mine who was getting a certification in HR, and mine came back as completely unhireable. And, you know, don't exit this person from your building immediately.
Walk away slowly.
Well, seriously, it basically said, like, can't be told what to do. So maybe that's why I'm here. In this role, but so I think, you know, I've had my experience with them as well and in corporate, and I'm always mortified when I see the results, but I mean, sure, you have to rely on something at some point, don't you? Some sort of external data or something to give you some line in the ground to be able to work off. But yeah, it's not been my experience.
I haven't killed nearly enough people for my psychological profile at this point in time, so there you go.
So our recruitment process has psych profiles in it, and it's a mandatory requirement. And if someone doesn't want to do it, we'll respect that and won't proceed any further with their application. The reason we do it, it's not so we're not doing Myers-Briggs and all that sort of stuff. What we do is we set attributes of a person that we think we need for a role type. So let's say it's a BDM sales role. Probably better to have an extroverted person than an introverted person. It's that sort of thing. So then as we go through the recruitment process, we ask people to do an online psych profile. Really important to emphasise the fact that it's not a test. You don't pass or fail it. It's just a profile. You know, are you a are you a rule follower or an innovator? You know, are you introvert, extrovert? It's that sort of stuff. And if you do that and you overlay the results over what the role needs, then you look for a natural fit. So I use the term of where there isn't a natural fit and you take the job, you're basically wading upstream. You're wading against the current up a river. Eventually you'll tire of it and you'll tap out. And that's one of the reasons people leave in the first 6 months, because they took on this job that they're really not suited for. They have to work hard to actually just do it. You know, it's not naturally interested. They're not naturally interested. So I think psych profiles are an extremely valuable tool for person fit to the role.
If you've got the time to do them, again, somebody in ops would be able to help you with that. Don't necessarily think it's needed when you're small. But yeah, as you grow, very important. My actual job when I was younger completely changed by doing a psych test. So I'll bore you with that story over a beer later on if anyone wants to hear about it.
Well, Kath, have you got a question? Or
I just wanted to ask if we could throw the mic over to Anne really quickly and get her thoughts on the exact question.
Yep, that's a great idea.
I love psych tests. WiseTech, we've been doing psych tests for a long time. Way back when I started doing recruiting, we used to psych test way back when. It was a pen and paper sort of exercise. It wasn't on a computer, and I had to learn the hard way of how to do that. The way I treat recruiting is it's a jigsaw, and people are different, right? So what we're looking at is we're looking at a jigsaw puzzle of someone. We don't know what the picture looks like, and there's all these little pieces of the puzzle that we need to put together. And part of that is understanding someone's resume. What's their career history? What's their background? What are they motivated by? And you get that from an interview. That's the first interview. So that's one piece of the puzzle. On its own, it doesn't tell you the full picture. One other piece of the puzzle will be testing. So at WiseTech, we're a really smart company, like highly intellectual people. So we know that we need smart people because smart people like to work with smart people. So we do cognitive ability assessments for the people coming into our organisation. That doesn't mean that people need to be of super high IQ to work here, because I'm not super high IQ, I'm middle of the road. And it didn't mean that I did a test and failed. It meant that it was just one part of that puzzle that we started to put together around what makes people successful. And it's only when you do the interview, the psych test, the cognitive tests, the deep dive technical interviews, the coding tests that you might do, when you put all of that together, you then see the picture of the person. You then see the picture of how does that person fit into the organisation. And only at that point should you make a hiring decision. Never make a decision based on a test. Never make a decision based on an interview. Put all of the pieces together that you need to make that decision. And for some organisations, some businesses, psych test will be part of it. For others, it won't. It really depends on the business and what they're looking to get from it. But I really value psychometric tests.
Thank you for that. There you go. Bonus answer. Well, if you've got any more questions, we can continue them over beer, wine, soft drinks, and everything else. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for Simon, Rochelle, and Peter for that fantastic panel. Thank you also to Anthony. Thank you, of course, to the fabulous Ange for bringing it home just then. I'm Simon. I'm out of here, and I'm handing you back to Kath.
Thank you so much, everyone. I know we're into resentment time now, so I'm going to keep this super quick. If there's anything that we haven't yet covered and there's something that you'd really like to see, a stone that you'd really like to see unturned, please let us know what the next series of this should be. What should we be exploring? Because we're going to find the people who can answer and talk about it. Anyone online, there's going to be links that you can get in touch with us. Anyone in person today, we're all here. But for now, go out and have a drink, have a chat, have something to eat. Au revoir.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, pleasure.
That was,
see you.
That was good fun.
Cheers.
Are you sticking around for
Yeah, absolutely.
That's right. Nice to see you.
Thanks over here. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thanks so much for speaking.
I know it's a dumb question. You were obviously pregnant, but I didn't think I noticed that you were pregnant last time.
All right. Well, there you go.
Guess
Not
I
everyone
go
can wear
looking.
stripes, but when you do, it can highlight a certain horizontally. What was I wearing last time? A sack, probably.
All right.
Yeah, there you go. I have my very own incubator here.
Yeah.
How are you doing? Ooh. And I think what happens to burnout is the interaction afterwards, and the song that you can see the people testing it out and flash in the pan. And then there's the same people saying questions you gotta go with where the lights tickle and just be fine, because that's the only way you're gonna do your job. I'll be honest, our team is 3 people in the startup, and so we're pretty bare bones, and we have to be able to do with a lot of different people. And so, like we're all 3 very different characters. My boss Emily is like behind the scenes. She was working for home before working for home, but she's got amazing connections and relationships. And,